So where does Jimmy G sit in on all of this with everyone waiting to see if Watson's out for the full year, and that might be a spot that the Browns would be interested in if Watson is out for the full year? Where does everything stand with one James G right now, Tom?
Well, when I went through 49ers camp, everybody said he's throwing the ball really well. He's zipping it around. It's just kind of, he hasn't done any of the movement stuff that you do in the course of practice because he's just throwing on the side right now. So he's got plenty of arm strength. It's just, regaining that, making every throw to every area of the field. That's kind of the process that he's still going through here. In terms of the Browns, we'll know when there's a decision from Peter Harvey on the appeal. I mean, that's really what it comes down to. Does Jimmy Garoppolo want to go into that situation and be the placeholder for Deshaun Watson? If it's a full year, maybe. But also, if it's a full year, you quite possibly are going to have a federal lawsuit filed that's going to go into the courts. And then whether it's week 1 or week 7, at some point, Deshaun Watson might end up playing again, which just puts, Jimmy in kind of a weird spot. By the time that it gets time for Garoppolo to be traded, because my belief is that they will take this all the way down to, I think it's August 30th is the final cuts. They'll probably take it all the way down there just to see if there's an injury somewhere else in the league before they would, ultimately, likely to cut Jimmy, assuming that Trey Lance is healthy. You'll have more information on the Watson front at that time. And, it really comes down to where is Jimmy going to go? He's got a non-guaranteed salary. So somebody's going to have to pay him. He's not coming in, I would not anticipate, for the minimum anywhere. So who's willing to spend money on that position? Who wants to bring him in and continue kind of going along this process? Because he's still going to need to ramp up his throwing and actually get out there and practice football for the first time since he had that surgery back in March. It's just a unique situation based upon the fact that you've got this guy who's, he's been to a Super Bowl, he's been to an NFC Championship game, he's won a lot, he's also had a lot of injuries, and he's coming off of a significant surgery. What's the price point that makes sense on that? For everybody involved, it makes sense to do what they're doing at this point. They couldn't trade him before training camp, so take this all the way down for the next 2 weeks here, see what the lay of the land is. Maybe somebody's not happy with their quarterback options. That's always a possibility as well. Something's going to happen. And barring an injury to Trey Lance, I don't think Jimmy Garoppolo is a 49er 2 weeks from now. But they may well take this all the way to August 30th before making that decision because they can.
Yeah, and if it takes all the way down to August 30th, boy, that would be really tough, even if they do release him. Let's just say they wind up releasing him, and it's, August 31st, right? I mean, would the Seahawks really twitch in that direction and pay him after maybe Drew Lock had a very good summer and training camp session? I don't know if that's possible. And then, of course, we were talking about Carolina all that time for potentially Jimmy G, and then it's now Baker Mayfield versus Sam Darnold there. And in the same way that it'll be tough to think how the Seahawks wouldn't grow with Drew Lock after they traded Russell Wilson, in part got him back in that trade, and they're taking on Drew Lock's former team in week 1. It's the same thing with Baker Mayfield taking on his former team in week 1. That seems like a no-brainer to me right now, despite the talk of competition.
Right, and the Panthers were never going to trade for Jimmy. Seattle was never going to trade for Jimmy. So, again, what's the price point at which it makes sense to make a move? Houston's another possibility, but the coaching staff loves Davis Mills.
They should
see what he's able to do. It's a different type of a marketplace. But again, Rich, we've seen things. I mean, Zach Wilson, your guy, got hurt a week ago, and we didn't think that the Jets were going to have this quarterback question going into the season. We've seen Teddy Bridgewater get hurt. Carson Wentz last year had that foot. He ended up making it back for week 1. But there's always several situations where you have some uncertainty that arises through the course of camp and the preseason. So let's see here. I don't think that Jimmy would want to go into a spot where it's hey, you're going to start 3 games while we wait for this guy to be ready. So then the question becomes, if he does get released on August 30th or shortly before that, does Jimmy sign immediately with wherever he goes, or does he even wait a few weeks into the season to see maybe there's some other injury that happens and he's got a chance to start the entire season? Those are all moving parts here, and there's a lot of discussions going on behind the scenes as the 49ers try to figure out if they've got some place they can trade.